I'm Chika Eloy, and this is a conversation designed for BCD people with BCD people. On this show, we're running through the diverse cultures of talent at BCD Travel, and we're showcasing our most confident self-colleagues. So come on, let's go have some fun as we explore the different functions, spaces, faces, and the complexities across our world of BCD.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are back for another week at A World of BCD, and this is a special week for me because I am taking you to a home of mine amongst the gum trees all the way down to Sydney, Australia, where I was born and raised, to one of my good friends, Phil Paterson. Welcome to the podcast and represent BCD Down Under. What you got, Phil?
Woo, g'day, Chika.
I don't know what to say outside of that, except
I don't know what to say, mate. That might get bored. That might get tiresome pretty quickly. So but I had to throw it in.
No, you're good. Tim Tams, Vegemite, VB, we are all in today, Phil. And am I not right? It is Australia Day this weekend, so we can celebrate. And I think this is a great day or a great week to put out the podcast on Australia Day weekend, right, Phil?
I know, right? Timing-wise, Chika, we've just nailed it. I've got the weekend coming up, so I think everyone is going to be at the beach.
Is that what we do in Australia? I mean, what do Australians do on Australia Day, which for the American people is the Independence Day? For people around the world, it's the day of celebration for a country. What does a typical Australia Day look like for Phil's family?
Well, look, I think we're pretty casual down here. I think some of the cliches are quite true around that. So could be, having a barbecue or just going around, see some friends, or go down the beach. I mean, it's summer down here, so it's perfect weather to go down, just get a bit of a tan. Not too much of a tan, hopefully. Don't want to get too burnt.
No, and it's really warm down there right now, right? I mean, Mum and Dad are telling me that it's scorching hot.
It's absolutely hot in Sydney, but I'll tell you, one place even hotter is actually my real hometown of Adelaide.
Oh,
beautiful city.
Adelaide, beautiful city.
Indeed, I am. Great city, city of churches. Tomorrow there, I believe it's going to be 45 Celsius, which for those who use Fahrenheit is 113.
Oh, that is way too hot. Way too hot for us that are sitting here right on the freezing level, and I'm sure all through a beer as well. Phil, and when there is one thing I want to clear up with you, because I get this almost daily here in the US. When you say barbie or barbecue and you throw things on the barbie, what stuff are you throwing on the barbie for Australia Day weekend?
Well, it's funny, Chika. I had this conversation all the time with my American friends because I explain it to them. They go, "Is it a cookout?" And I go, "Sort of similar." So it's we put on sausages, steak, pretty much anything that's meat. It just gets thrown on the barbie. We'll have a salad on the side, just so
sheep, but we don't know what it is. It's just meat. We put
that's it. It's just random meat. Bit of a salad on the side, so we're being healthy. We're being
shrimp. Do you guys put a shrimp on the barbie out there? What do you do?
I'm not really a big seafood guy, but I know people that like put prawns on the barbecue.
Prawns. That was cool. Very good. Well, Phil, I appreciate you joining us today. I know that it's midday there for you, and we're rocking and rolling. So really interested in speaking. You're our first guest on the podcast on the World of BCD. And I'm sure many of the listeners have heard of the Australian market heaps around the BCD network. So maybe we can just jump in with, what is your story? How did you join BCD? Where have you come from? Where are you now? And what do you do down there? You're in the Sydney office, correct?
Yeah, correct. So I'm based right here in Sydney, which is our Australia HQ. So we've got some commercial team, our finance team, some consultants, our leadership team is based in here. So in terms of my BCD story, I've been with the company for just a bit over 7 years now. So I started off back in December 2011. So I've been working in TNC space for about 10 or so years. And yeah, most of that has been with BCD because it's just been a great company to grow with. When I started with BCD, I was a consultant. I was just a frontline consultant. I was working on a desk we had, which was a relief desk. So if someone was away sick or they're on leave, I'd just step in. So I was in that consulting role for a couple of years, and then I moved up to become a team leader. So I managed my team, gave them all that support they required, and then I eventually moved up to become an operations manager in Sydney, and really enjoyed that. But I felt, maybe it wasn't 100% I was keen on it, and the opportunity came up to become an account manager, now known as a program manager. And so they basically said, Phil, you're interested? And I thought, yeah, I'd love to give that a go. In a sense, I actually had to start from the beginning again, because I started off with more of our smaller customers and built my way up. So I'm now been in that role for almost 4 years now, and acting as program manager for some of our biggest customers here in Australia.
And is that where you focus, Phil? Are you focus just on the Australian customer, or are you all across APAC, just living in Australia?
So I'm focused on our customers here in Australia. So I have a mix of customers that are just Australia only. So for example, one of my customers is our biggest public broadcaster. Other customers are part of a global program. So some people listening may work with me from a regional global perspective. So I look after the Australian market for some of our bigger global customers.
So maybe you can step into that for just a second, Phil. Talk to us about what are some of the tensions that you're facing or you're seeing down there in Australia, and how does that impact the greater APAC market, in even relation to the global, if you can speak to that?
I guess sometimes where we have, I wouldn't say challenges, I guess sometimes it's maybe miscommunication or maybe just a bit of understanding what is required is Australia is a very unique market in APAC. And like any market, it's got its own unique sort of quirks and requirements that we need to understand and build our products and our solutions around. I'll give you a couple of examples of, I guess, where there's one aspect where it's really tech focused. It's really around having that clicks, just those 2 clicks, you're done support, and then that another aspect where it's more traditional, very service heavy, service intense sort of support. Chico, I don't know if you know the top 2 airline routes in the world.
The top 2 airline routes in the world. Oh, I'm going to guess it would have to be between Bora Bora and Hawaii. No, I have no idea. Phil. Go ahead.
Oh, I wish. So the top one is in Korea. It's, I believe, Seoul to Jeju Island.
Okay.
That would be number 1.
Really?
Number 2 is Sydney to Melbourne, our 2 biggest cities in Australia.
Go Australia. So Sydney to Melbourne, is that, so did you say in the world, or did you just say in APAC?
In the world.
Wow. Okay, so Korea and Australia hold the biggest routes in the world. Awesome. Go ahead.
I know, right? I was quite surprised, but there's a couple of explanations why Sydney to Melbourne is on the top. First of all, they are our biggest city, so there's about 5 million in Sydney, 4.5 million people in Melbourne. They're about 90 minutes away by plane. It's not really a land option unless you want to take a train for 14 hours. Most corporate travellers don't want to do that, funnily enough.
Yeah, 90 minutes. So that's just like an LA to San Francisco.
Yeah, it's very similar to Los Angeles to San Fran sort of flight. So it's almost like a bus. When you travel between the big cities in Australia, it's like a bus. If I go Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, they're very regular services. For example, during the peak periods for Sydney Melbourne flights, say between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. each morning, both the major airlines, Qantas and Virgin Australia, they have services every 15 minutes. That is crazy. If you look at it in perspective to other markets around the world, it's just so regular. So people look at it like, it's just, I just want to get on the flight this time. I know where I'm going to. It's a very simple process. So they just want it done in a couple of clicks. They really just want to do a self-service for a portal, and it's done. Very easy. But on the other hand, the thing about Australia is, and Chica, you'll certainly be aware of this, it's a long way away from the rest of the world.
But yeah, we're in the middle of nowhere, and it's the best country in the world. So
it is the best country in the world, but it's a very long way away. So, for example, you go to Singapore,
yeah,
which
go to Singapore. It just takes 8 hours to get up there, right? Come on.
Exactly. That is a trip that a lot of corporate travellers have to do for Australia, because that's a lot of APAC headquarters are there. So that's quite a decent trip in itself. But if you have to go further outside of APAC, so you have to go to Europe or go to North America, that is a long time. That's, you're looking at 20 hours flight time at least. And with that, that requires a bit more of a service-orientated approach, more the traditional model, because there's a number of options. The online portals maybe not quite where they need to be yet in terms of flight and fare options, and people want to feel like in terms of those long haul journeys that they've got a lot of support and they've had someone really look into it, because at the end of the day it's them sitting in that seat for at least 20 hours. They want it to be comfortable. They don't want to, especially since it's for business, it's for work. They don't want to have an uncomfortable journey because that's going to they're going to be miserable, and then they're not going to be efficient when they get on the ground. So people really want to have that.
That's a really interesting perspective there, Phil, because I'm sure in America, it's like, oh, I'm going down to Miami. It's going to take me 30 minutes in the air, I want a London shop. That's like a 7-hour trip, but you're now talking 20 hours. I mean, that's a big deal and a big difference when you're the consumer and you're the person that has to get off the plane and then show up into a meeting.
Absolutely. So that's something it's sort of a market where we need to have that real online touch, that real online sort of setup, so people are easily able to get around Australia, New Zealand, but then we need to give them that extra attention and love when it comes to those big international trips.
So, Phil, from the customer perspective, do you feel that, or maybe what are some of the challenges or unique kind of twists that you feel in Australia you're getting compared to around the world?
There's a number of twists that are unique to the Australian market. One more technical aspect is our domestic fares are one-way fares. Ooh. So you can just book Sydney to Melbourne one way on, say, Qantas, book Melbourne to Sydney the other way on Virgin. You're not paying too much extra.
How much does a one-way ticket cost nowadays?
Ooh, depends. We're actually seeing a bit of an increase this year in the Australian domestic market, so it's actually going up by about 4%. So getting down to Melbourne, if you've booked fairly enough in advance, Sydney to Melbourne, about $250 one way.
Whoa, $250 one way, not the old $89. I thought Tiger Air was going for $15, like Ryanair in the UK, right?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, that's more your Qantas and Virgin Australia's there. So that they're more full service carriers. Jets you probably see around the 150 mark, and Tiger you still might see around 100, depending on when you book.
They still serve full meals and you get beer and wine, even if it's just for the hour trip.
So you still, with Qantas, you still usually generally get a warm meal. Virgin, you'll get a bit of something during what we call happy hour on our plane. So if you're flying between a major city between 5 and 8 p.m., you'll get a nice cold drink as well if you're flying Qantas or Virgin. Then we have Jetstar, which is a low-cost carrier, but they don't always act like a low-cost carrier. I mean, you get on the plane, you'll pay your extras, but they're sort of a hybrid. It's a bit of a hybrid space where they've still got some aspects there where it's more of a traditional model. And then you have Tiger, which is very much a full-strength low-cost carrier.
Very interesting, Bill. And when we think across the landscape of BCD travel, we're not always just dealing with air. What are some of the other big areas within Australia that maybe you're focused on right now? Is hotels big down there? Is rail big at all? What are there other options for us that we're really keying into?
I'll start off with rail because I've had the question come up to me in the past from my colleagues at the EMEA is what do you do about rail in Australia? The problem with rail in Australia is there's two challenges. First of all, it's very large distances. So if you look at a map of Australia, it's not too much smaller than a map of the US. So it is a big country. So basically, it's a long way to get between places, and the infrastructure, unfortunately, is not great. So I gave you an example earlier, Sydney to Melbourne, 14-hour train journey. You're not going to get any corporate travellers doing that.
Sure.
So rail's not really a factor. Hotel's an interesting one because while Australia's a big country, it's still relatively a small market. We have about, I think last time I checked, about 24 million people in Australia. in the global context, that's not a huge amount of people.
Right.
So
There's more of them in LA, right?
I recently went to Shanghai, and that's pretty much the whole population of Australia, in just the one city there. So everyone, being such a smaller market, everyone knows everyone. So hotel BDMs, they know us very well. And we're not talking about more chain-based sales people, we're talking about individual level. So every year I'll get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails when it's time to negotiate rates. I'll get more than a few requests to have a coffee or a dinner with a hotel supplier, because they're obviously very keen to work with our customers. But being such a small market, they want to get as much as the action as much as possible. And since they know everyone, they'll reach out to everyone.
And Phil, in terms of the organization, you just triggered me when you said you're meeting with suppliers as well. Who do you report to, and who do they report to, and all the way up?
So my immediate report is Matt Campbell, who started in October as our Director of Account Management here in Australia. So Matt's a very experienced guy. He's been in the TMSB space for quite some time. And Matt reports into our Australian Managing Director, a name that quite a few people will be familiar with, Tas Messinas.
And when you look at Matt and Tas and when you guys huddle up in a room and you start looking forward, what do you think's maybe the one or two things that you've really got to keep your eye on there in the Australian market? We've discussed a lot today, Phil, and I'm interested just for our listeners' perspective as well. When we think Australia, what's Australia really honed in on at the moment?
I think one item we need to always keep an eye on in the TMC space. It is a very competitive market. As mentioned, it's a small market compared to other countries, smaller population, but we have a very well developed travel industry, and we also have two multinational TMC competitors based here in Australia. The key item that we are really focused on is that digital setup, digital market, in terms of having that easy process for people to just get on a phone or a laptop, or we are like every other market. It's a lot of focus around the digital aspects, around having a more modular program for our customers, which is powered by some of the solutions we have in Solution Source. So it's a lot of it is around that transformation.
And
it's not just an Australia
as a company focus too, right? The whole digital space, digital transformation.
It is, especially here in Australia, because as mentioned, it is a well-developed market. People are very much used to getting online. I think I can't watch any television program here without seeing about 3 advertisements for a OTA in each ad break. So
that's funny.
So people are all across it, and it's pretty much an expectation. If they just want that typical Sydney-Melbourne trip, they just go online, a couple of clicks, it's done.
So Phil, you said that you work in the office. How is your do you have virtual there in Australia, or is it all in office in all of the different cities?
It's funny you say that. I'm a bit unusual. I do like to work from the office, but we tend to find that most of our people do love to work from home. About 80%, I think last time I checked, work from home down here in Australia. A lot of our consultants are working from home these days, a number of our commercial staff. There's a couple of reasons behind that. Australia is a bit of an expensive country, especially Sydney and Melbourne. I think Sydney's almost one of the top 10 most expensive cities in the world now. It's a beautiful city, but
I can believe that. How much does a Big Mac cost right now? Let's jump into that. How much does a Big Mac cost in Sydney, Australia?
Oh, I'll have to go down. We have a McDonald's downstairs. I have to check. I think last time I checked it was around $7 or $8 Australian dollars.
Wow, $8 for a Big Mac. And I'm sorry, because I know that I got a couple of family in there too. How much for a packet of cigarettes in Australia right now? This blows me away.
Well, I don't want to look at the packet of cigarettes, because we have what we call the plain packaging, where you just have the effects of smoking on your body, so you don't want to look at that.
Is it above $30 now?
Yeah, it's at least $30.
So
because,
one packet of cigarettes. This is a sustainability shout out. This is why you should be healthy. 30 plus what? $37 for a packet for one packet of cigarettes. Anyway, I digress. Let's come back to your virtual workers.
So yeah, I mean, it's a very expensive cities to live in. So people like to probably live more outside of the major cities. So they prefer to work from home, so they're not spending, 2 hours on the train just to come to the office. So it's gone fantastically well. A lot of that has been driven, and I'll give a shout out to Denise Farrell, who is our Senior Director of Operations.
Denise. We love you, Denise.
Denise has really driven that, especially for our operations teams, having the right technology so our customers still get the same easy and seamless experience they would expect.
Well, Phil, we appreciate you giving us so much of your time and insight into the Australian market. I know we have not touched that yet on this podcast, so I'm sure that you'd be open to any of the listeners contacting you if they've got other questions or want to go deeper with some of the topics we've covered today. I'll put all of your notes in the show notes that we have at the bottom of the podcast. We're going to jump straight into the 5 random questions. So if you were eating breakfast right now and you had toast, what is most Australian to put on toast in breakfast in the morning?
Chica, there's only one answer to that. That is good old Vegemite.
Vegemite.
Now, for those who are familiar with Vegemite and may have gone, yuck, that's disgusting, there may be a reason for that. You only put on a light scrape on your toast. If you put too much on, it just tastes like salt.
I prefer a big, thick peanut butter scoop on that. But I would have also said baked beans. That would have been also an acceptable answer. Question number 2. Phil, say something in Australian that's really cool right now.
What's the go? Mate, what's the go?
What's the go, mate? What does that even mean?
What's the go? What's happening?
Oh, what's happening, my homie? All right, question number 3. Have you ever touched, ridden, seen a kangaroo in person, and do you see them often in Sydney?
I have seen a few kangaroos, but you know what? You need at least about an hour or two to drive out of any city to see kangaroos.
Really?
I know there's sometimes a common perception that, kangaroos just walk down the street, just hopping along, but they're very much an animal that likes the wide open spaces.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Favorite sport in Australia for you? Question number 4.
Oh, this is a tough one because it's summer, it's cricket season.
Oh,
so
don't talk about the Australian cricket team right now.
If anyone from India is listening, don't email me about cricket. I'm not talking to you guys. I do apologise. But my real love is Australian rules football.
Final question that I love to ask all of our guests here at A World of BCD. What is the favourite thing about working for this company?
I guess the most important thing when it comes to working with any organisation in terms of really appreciating it is the people. And especially here in Australia, we've got some fantastic people, that they have helped me grow, but also they're just really, really lovely people. BCD is obviously very much a family organisation, and we're definitely like that down here. So it's just really the people that makes a company like BCD.
Thank you so much, Phil, for pouring into us today. I appreciate you. Happy Australia Day, and go and celebrate on behalf of me and all of the Australians around the BCD community.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chico. Get one into you.